Here is how you do a spine. Spines require lots of measurement and precision, so we'll definitely want to have our ruler nearby. And first, what I'm doing is measuring the length of the cover. The length of the cover obviously is different from the length of the text block, so I'm going to find the middle part of the cover and measure down to the 1/10 of a centimeter. And now I'm going to measure the width of the text block. And I'm just going to jot that down too. And now, grabbing some book cloth, I'm going to start to draw out the new spine. So there's a right and a wrong side of every piece of book cloth. We're going to want to draw on the wrong side with a red colored pencil, just because that's easier to see than graphite. Using my ruler, I'm going to find a straight edge. I usually like to start on like a crisp corner where I have two guaranteed straight sides and a 90-degree angle. I'm going to measure out some buffer room for flaps to fold onto the front and the back covers. So I'm going to do a measurement that's anywhere between 1.5 to 2 inches. I like to do 1.5 pretty much every time, just as like a standard measurement. But also if you have like different colors on the cover or something you want to cover up on the cover, you can measure out how much space that is and add that as your buffer. So after I mark up that 1.5 inch, I'll measure out the width of the spine and then that 1.5 inch again over on the other side. So you're sandwiching 1.5 inch width of the spine, 1.5 inch. And then using my other guaranteed straight edge, I'm measuring out 1.5 inches with the length of the cover in centimeters, and then 1.5 inches again. So again, sandwiching 1.5, length of the cover 1.5 on my two guaranteed straight edges. It's kind of hard to see just because my tallies are so tiny, but trust that they're there. And now I'm going to go down to one of my non-guaranteed sides and kind of line it up because the ruler does have a 90-degree angle. So if you line up the bottom of the ruler with the bottom of the book cloth, you can kind of estimate like where things will be. So that's 1.5 length of the cover again, and then 1.5 inches. And I'm just kind of putting little dashes where that is for now, but we'll get more accurate in a second. I honestly wouldn't go much shorter than 1.5 inches, honestly. That wouldn't be enough. So now, using that top tally mark on either side, I'm going to draw a straight line across. Beautiful. And that creates like my third guaranteed straight edge. So now along that line that I just made, in order to make sure that all of my measurements are correct and to get my perfect rectangles, I'm going to measure 1.5 inches, width of the text block in centimeters, and then another 1.5 inches. And now I have 3 sides guaranteed. Beautiful. So we'll use that those 2 tallies that I made at the top and the bottom now, that we have the width correct, to create that 4th guaranteed side. Beautiful. And now we'll just connect all of the other little tallies that we made so that it forms a grid of 9 rectangles. So the top dashes with the top dashes and the side dashes with the side dashes. You do want to be courteous when doing this to get super straight edges and stuff, just because the next person's spine will be dependent on like how straight of lines you drew, in order to maximize our use of the book cloth. So just be mindful of that. And now I'm drawing a diagonal line on each of the 4 corners. I'm going from the outside corner into the inside so that it's on this little slant. We're going to cut those triangles out. If you look really closely, you'll notice that it's not a perfect triangle that I'm drawing. It's kind of a weird shaped trapezoid. And there's just a little sliver, like a couple millimeters, between like the inner corner and where I'm drawing the line to, because we have to account for the width of the top of the bookboard, which is a little confusing, but you'll see it come together. So if I just drew from corner to corner, then we wouldn't be accommodating for that length. So this helps when you actually apply your spine, make sure that everything's covered that needs to be. It'll be more obvious when I'm cutting out the spine. So we'll discuss it then as well. And once you've drawn up your book cloth, you're going to grab some scrap paper that has like a little bit of more thickness than just computer paper. We have plenty of scrap paper that's like kind of construction texture almost. And again, you're going to find 2 guaranteed straight edges, and you're going to measure out 3 times the width of the text block, plus a little over half the width of the text block. I warned you there would be lots of measurements and precision and math, so sorry about that. So for example, if my text block were 4 centimeters, I would be measuring out 12 centimeters with a dash at each 4, and then like 2 additional centimeters. And this is to create sturdiness for the spine. We're going to place 1 rectangle in there, and then we're also going to make a pocket to place on the text block to give it some more flexibility and make sure that it can open properly. So now I'm going to my other guaranteed edge, and I'm measuring out the length of the text block, no extra margin on this, and then going over to my non-guaranteed side, measuring out the length, and then drawing that line once again, just like we did on the book cloth, between the top 2 tallies, where I'm going to once again measure out 3 times the width of the text block and a little bit more, about half of what the text block is. And then once I have that all tallied up, I'm going to draw some lines connecting them. So you should have 4 rectangles at the end of this. You're going to have 3 rectangles that are the same size, and then 1 that's a little bit thinner. And when you go to the paper cutter in a minute to cut out the rectangles both in the book cloth and on this piece of scrap paper, you're going to trim off the rectangle that is furthest away from the thinner rectangle on the scrap paper. Now you don't have to do this. This is just for the video so that you can see more easily. I'm putting a little squiggly mark on the line that I'm going to cut to separate that 1 rectangle from the other 3. Hot tip, when you're using this scrap paper at the paper cutter, shine your phone flashlight underneath it and you can see more easily where you need to cut. Okay, so now that those are all cut out, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to make 2 incisions right here, just to the little intersection. We don't want to cut much further. You can see a little bit better here that there is a little margin when I drew those diagonal lines. So just like a couple millimeters. I'm cutting those inner triangles out. Once again, those flaps are going to go over the edges of the book boards to the inside of the book. So that's what that little margin accommodates. Oh my gosh, butterfingers over here. And now I'm going to make like a little house shape. I'm going to cut off the corners of the center rectangle. So it looks like that. Same exact thing on the other side. We're going to make 2 incisions just to the intersection, cut out the 2 inner triangles, leaving that little margin, and then cut the house shape. And our very next step is to make headbands for the spine to add more reinforcement. So these are going to go actually into the spine underneath those center flaps. So I'm going to use this thicker waxy string to measure out 2.5 times the width of the text block times 2, so 1 for each side. This string is a little bit different from rebind string, but it can be easy to mix them up. So just make sure you're using the rebind string for rebinds and the headband string for headbands. So I measured out one side, and then I'm just using the one I cut previously to measure the other one. Because this string is a little bit waxy, you can warm it up in your hands in order to mold it more easily. So you're going to fold it in half, pinch one side, and then start twisting together so that it forms a tight coil or spiral. And now you'll do the same thing with the other one. These will likely be a little bit too long, so what you'll do is you'll just measure them once again and make sure that they are the length they need to be, and you can trim off any excess from the ends, not from the part where you folded it in half. Okay, so now grabbing that extra rectangle that I cut off, I'm going to put glue on the center, just a thin line, and using a paintbrush, I'm going to smooth that out just within the red lines that I drew earlier. No need for too much glue, just enough that it gets the job done. So here I am wiping up some of that excess and smoothing it out. We're gonna put the rectangle right on top of that, smooth it out with our hands, with the bone folder, whatever works for you. I am gonna make sure that it's perfectly centered and within the red lines that I drew though. And now I'm going to grab a piece of non-adhesive because I'm going to put some glue on the center flap, smooth that out with my paintbrush, and right in the crease where the book cloth meets the white piece of scrap paper, I'm going to put one of the new headbands that I made. I'm also putting some of that glue onto the scrap paper. Not too far up on it, but as you can see, that's me double checking that the measurement is okay, and I did have to take a sliver off. So now I'm matching up the other headband with the one I just measured and making sure that they're even. So now putting it in that crease, holding it in place while I fold the flap over, and then I'm going to smooth it out. I'm going to use a bone folder as well, hopefully, in a minute. Once again, same thing on the other side. Make sure to wipe up any excess glue, especially when you're using the bone folder, to really smooth it out and make sure that there's not excess glue in there. A lot of stuff will come out. And when you're first using the bone folder, you'll want to press back to make sure that the headband is perfectly in the crease where we want it, and it doesn't slide forward or slide backward. So using the tip of my bone folder to get in that crease, you can see some of the glue coming. But once you have that crease down, you'll want to start from the headband and push out towards the center. And then if there's any excess glue kind of by the headband, just use the tip of your bone folder to scrape that up. Okay, once that's all smoothed out, I'll let that dry, and I can decorate that spine as I see fit, and then spray it with the fixative spray outside. Importantly, you'll just want to do a couple of layers over the top. Don't be too heavy-handed. And now I'm going to take the other 3 rectangles that I have and fold along the red lines, folding in. And then I'm going to put glue on the thinner rectangle on the flap and spread that out with a brush. If you remember earlier, I mentioned that the length of the text block is shorter than the length of the covers. So once I have this smoothed out, I'm going to want to trim it so that it is slightly shorter than the length of the text block, not the length of the covers. So you see that's a little bit too long. Just take a margin off. And then what I'm going to do is put some glue onto the text block itself, and we're going to stick this little pocket onto that once we smooth that glue out. Okay, once the pocket is stuck down, I'm gonna use a bone folder or my fingers to smooth it. And then I'm gonna put maybe 2 to 3, maybe even 4 rubber bands to keep this pocket down. It's kind of up to you how many you use and what you feel like you can do. And then that just sat overnight and rested to dry. Now it's the next day, I have a spine decorated and it's all sprayed and dried. Once you spray it, you have to let it sit and dry for like a day or a few hours. So now I'm putting a couple lines of glue on either side of that center scrap piece of paper and then smoothing it out with my brush. If your book cloth is a little bit more porous, it might suck in the glue faster, so you kind of have to move fast when you do this. Taking up some excess and moving it to the other side. Once again, be careful not to get any onto the scrap piece of paper in the middle. Doing a little flip there. Nice, and once we're adequately gluey on either side, we're going to see which direction the spine is first of all and make sure that it matches the direction of the text. And then we can lay it onto the text block and center it, smooth it out, make sure that it's aligned on either side. We don't want it to be uneven. And then you'll just kind of smooth it out using your fingers to press down. And after you use your fingers, we'll do either side with the bone folder to kind of create that hinge as well. So yes, starting with the hinge, creating that little space. And then I'm going to go from the spine out towards the text block using the flat side of my bone folder. It's going to squeeze that glue, kind of squeegee it out from underneath there, any excess, and you'll want to scrape this up. So once you've glued down both sides, we're going to start to work on the triangular or trapezoidal flaps. So I'll put just a little dot of glue on each one, smooth that out with the paintbrush, and then carefully fold it over, paying extra close attention to the corner closest to the headband region, making sure that that's really folded down smoothly because it's kind of hard sometimes. If you need a little bit of help getting that to lay how you'd like it to, feel free to use a bone folder to get in there. The other thing, as you can see with this fabric, it's a little bit stiffer, so that can be tricky to get it to lay flat on the first time. It takes a little bit more glue sometimes or more pressure. And as you can see, I'm tucking that book cloth into the hinge, getting it to glue down. And double checking there. You can put non-adhesive or Capco in there if you like. I feel like I often don't need it just because of how much glue I use, and also I'm really careful when applying the glue and when placing those flaps down that I take any excess up. But if you're worried, go for it. Same thing with the other 3. I should also say that it's fun to sign your spines that you do with a little signature. Everybody has a different one. So like I knew someone who drew a little ginkgo leaf next to their initials. Some people write their initials in creative ways. I draw like a little crescent moon next to CC, my initials. So it's fun. You can put that wherever you like. Some people like to put it on these flaps that go inside of the book or on the back side of the cover. That's usually where I write mine, as you can see right there by my thumb. Now we have a beautiful spine. To secure that, you can grab a couple of rubber bands. You know the drill, one at the top, one at the bottom. To really reinforce those hinges that you just made, you can stick a couple of rods in there and then let it dry on the cards overnight. And then once it's dry, this can go off to labeling.